Morning, rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show. And it's Tuesday, April, March, May, who knows what day it is. The last 24 hours have been pretty wild. I've lost track of time completely. Big, whopping news, maybe the biggest news since we started the Wake Up America show last September. Tucker Carlson out from Fox News, and everybody wonders the big question, why? We'll talk about that pretty much all morning from every angle, and also in much, much smaller news, Don Lemon fired from CNN. We don't know if Tucker Carlson was fired or not, although I will discuss a little bit knowing what I know about Fox News, having worked there about a dozen years ago. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but Don Lemon for sure fired. Really? We'll be talking about that today. I'm looking forward to having my first guest on the show today at 7:30 a.m. Mark McCluskey, former U.S. Senate candidate here in the state of Missouri, and an irregular guest on the Tucker Carlson show, says that there is no reason to watch Fox News anymore. We'll hear from Mark McCluskey a little bit later on in this morning. You don't want to miss that. Make sure you set an appointment if you have to leave and come back to hear Mark's thoughts on what went down. At 8 o'clock this morning, I'll speak to Camellia Peterson, who's talking to us about state of Missouri looking to ban transgender reassignment surgery for adults. Apparently, even the Secretary of State of Missouri, Jay Ashcroft, one of the most conservative members of the Missouri government, is not even for this. Was it all a mistake, a mix-up? I don't get it. I thought we were trying to protect kids here, not adults from making poor decisions, but you know what? That's what happens. We'll talk about that this morning at 8 o'clock with Camellia Peterson. And yeah, don't forget, Buddy Mansour. Thank you for reminding me. Appreciate you, buddy. Don Lemon as well, out this morning. Not Don Lemon, but Dan Bongino also out at Fox News. It's a pretty big shakeup. And I'll tell you why I think that this is going down here in just a couple of minutes. At 8:30 this morning, BX Bullet says that Tucker was always a psyop. What? We'll hear from BX Bullet about that. And she wants to talk to us a little bit today about the transhumanist agenda. That'll be interesting. We'll hear from her today at 8:30 today. Should be quite interesting. You don't want to miss that. So make sure you set an appointment for BX Bullet to join us a little bit later on the show today. All right. Well, let's hit the big story today. Tucker Carlson axed from Fox News. Why was Tucker Carlson axed from Fox News? His sudden exit kind of rattled the media and political spheres on Monday. But here are some of the biggest takeaways from his departure. One is that it, of course, deprives Fox of its biggest star. I mean, no matter how you slice it, he was the A-lister on that network. His ratings, along with the Five, rivaled as the network's highest, and he was easily one of the two most influential hosts, right there alongside Sean Hannity, especially during the Trump presidency. Of course, he also became the network's biggest target for that reason. Advertisers were routinely being pressured by progressives and outside groups to flee his show. The audience remained resilient, however. Carlson delivered a different type of the typical kind of canned right-wing show other than other commentary programs delivered on the network, and he even included some lefty guests on his show. Now that that's gone, Fox is going to have to try and pick up the pieces and figure something else out for the 2024 election cycle. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez already taking credit for the scalp yesterday in her discussion. Take a listen to this.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country, I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled. And then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important. And there you go.
All right, let's consider this for just a moment here. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the most chilling statement I think I might have ever heard her say. Most of the time, what I hear from her usually is the type of stuff you might hear if you rode the short bus to school on a regular basis. But there, I think it was a very chilling statement. Deplatforming works, and it's good.
Deplatforming works, and it is important. And
It is important.
there you go.
Deplatforming works and it is important. That right there, I think, ought to raise the stakes for those who think that they can stay above the fray in the culture wars. For too long, I think people of our ideological ilk have, like I said yesterday with John Miltimore, if you heard my interview with him, libertarians like to hold themselves above the fray. But free speech, I think, is more than just the attitude towards government censorship. It should also be about a culture of free speech. The left in this statement right here has abandoned their historic views in regards to free speech and free inquiry. This is not, it was never about the science. It was always about compliance. And to me, this should be the catalyst for libertarians learning how to fight back. It also means that in this type of a war footing that we are placed on, that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is claiming, this right here is someone declaring war on you. And again, whether you accept it or not, war is at your gates, and this statement right here ought to show it. But what that means is that unfortunately the right will have to accept some small amount of hypocrisy, in order to fight back against these kinds of tactics, which means that deplatforming must be done to the left until they are punished so much that they will recant and again accept and embrace the principles of free speech. But the laws of war are not the same as the laws of peace. And until we have peace, we must learn how to make war. Let's continue on here. 5 takeaways of the Tucker Carlson's exit from Fox News. Let's continue this discussion. I've got more Tucker Carlson clips to play for you a little bit today. Conservatives lose a kingmaker. Yeah, that's another big one. To give an idea kind of what Carlson means for conservatives, I've got a sampling of some comments here from some in the immediate aftermath of the Fox News announcement. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio labeled him as the most courageous person in American media. And certainly I think that Tucker was pretty brave in a lot of the things that he said. Whether or not I agreed with him, I actually, there were many times when I found myself not agreeing with Tucker, but I thought he was brave for saying what he was saying because it was so clearly controversial. And it's difficult as a media personality to tell you that that one person is a truth teller versus not. I think that everyone in the media has a certain element of show business to it, which involves a fair amount of deception in order for us to be able to bring to you a show. Think about any movie, even the most historically accurate movie. Tom Hanks loves World War II. Steven Spielberg, big World War II buffs, right? They brought to you the miniseries Band of Brothers is a perfect example. There were times in that miniseries that no matter how much of an attention to detail that they wanted to have or historical accuracy that they have, not only did they have to change some of history in order to bring you a more entertaining miniseries, but they actually just made flat out mistakes in some of the history. So remember that oftentimes, even if there's a host that you really like, even myself included, there may be times when not only is the host intending to deceive in order to entertain, but also the hosts themselves just makes a mistake. Sometimes I accidentally say the complete opposite of what it is that I say, or the complete opposite of what it is that I mean. And that's really important to understand when you have media, when you're watching media. There really does need to be a filter between yourself and the media. And I am the type of person who raises very high walls and barred gates between myself and the media in terms of filtering what gets in to my media processes It's very filtered. It doesn't mean that, sometimes Jerry Springer doesn't get in, or trash TV, or reality shows or things like that, but only in very small doses. And I highly advise you to do the same. If you find yourself consuming media for hours and hours and hours and hours at a time, every single day, you might want to make sure that that you have a filter in order to ensure that what you're consuming really is good for you. Because consuming media, to me, is just like diet. It's If you're on a constant diet of junk food, right, you're gonna suffer for that. And your brain, I think, operates in much the same way. The more junk media that you're consuming, the less brain matter, right? The more that's going to reflect your personality and your thoughts. Let's continue here. Donald Trump Jr. said in an interview that his exit changes things permanently for the GOP and conservatism, right? Senator Ron Johnson tweeted that Carlson has been engaging in the best journalism on TV, uncovering and exposing the truth. He added that the decision is a huge loss for the network. It's also important to remember that a lot of these people who are saying this, having gone on Tucker Carlson quite frequently, they're going to say things like this because they might have lost their access to an enormous audience. Right. Typically, there's a lot of fluffing up of politicians for media figures if that media figure likes them and gives them plenty of airtime or says nice things about them. You can text the show today at 573-319-1586. Again, text us today at 573-319-1586. Chris Morrill says in the live stream, it's okay to read from biased sources if you recognize the bias and adjust for it. No, it's true. And the thing is that pretty much everybody is biased. And even if you read an article that is completely unbiased and just is a rote recitation of the facts, it's still biased because the author used their bias to determine what article to write. So there's always bias in anything that you read, and it is important to adjust for it. Rare Camellia says, this is why I always say one of the best things I ever did was to stop listening to conservative talk radio. Well, that's because, of course, I'm not there, right? John Rail says, I take everything from everyone with a grain of salt, even you, AP. Good. Like Glenn Beck says, don't believe me. Do your own research. I'm with you. Thank you very much, John Rail. Nice to see you all here today. Good big audience so far today, getting started. Make sure that you click like on that stream if you're joining us from Rumble or on YouTube this morning. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're talking about Tucker Carlson being out at Fox News. Good morning, Kermode Bear. Good morning, Studio 314, Matt Unruh, Sarah Palacios, Barney Stiles, my lovely wife Stephanie, who's here with us today. Chris Morrill is joining us, as well as Quest Fanning and a bunch of the crew. Nice to see you all here today. All right, let's continue on here with my list of things, some of the big takeaways from Tucker Carlson's exit from Fox News. A big shift might be coming from Fox News. That $787 million settlement with Dominion Voting Systems is creating what's likely to be a kind of sliding doors moment for the network, as it's kind of trying to put the aftermath of the 2020 election in the rearview mirror. Boy, nobody suffered more from the 2020 election than Fox News. And that's not to say that you should necessarily feel bad for them. I'm not saying that. But probably from every angle that you look at it, Fox News botched the 2020 election. Not only from a perspective of their audience, but also from the financial perspective and the Dominion voting systems. And also, I think their desire to try and purge the individuals that they believed were responsible for the 2020 election night mess involved them getting rid of some actual, real, credentialed journalists that were there. Some of you might not know this name. Chris Starwalt was an example, right? When Fox News called the election in Arizona for Biden on election night. Of course, there was a huge backlash to that, and we all remember. But when Fox backed up their reporters initially, the backlash from the audience was so severe that they said that, well, some heads have got to roll, and they didn't fire Tucker Carlson. They didn't fire, many of the other hosts that had participated in claiming that the 2020 election was stolen, which is, of course, what eventually culminated to the Dominion lawsuit. They actually fired many of their credentialed reporters at the time. Chris Starwalt was one of them who, knowing him when I worked there at Fox News, was probably one of the best straight newsmen that they had right there. One of the best reporters and journalists, not a pundit, really, just someone who was there to give you the straight facts. And they thought that by firing Chris Starwalt, that was going to solve the problems, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to really change their minds until Tucker Carlson really came out swinging in the last couple of years as the massive mega hit that he was. Now, was he a big star, before that? Sure. But I really think that if anything, that he's shown the brightest in the last 2 years of the Biden administration. And I think that I think anybody would agree with that. But it wasn't enough. Now, my theory is that the Tucker departure, the Bongino departure, has everything to do with Dominion voting machines. It has everything to do with that lawsuit and the $787 million. As Chris Morrill said in the live stream earlier, if you had lost your employer, been in part of losing your employer that much money, you would probably be fired too. And if you didn't read any of the detailed text message exchanges that Tucker Carlson engaged in back and forth, I'm not going to read them here. Needless to say that people will always engage in a denial of the facts when they like somebody. Somebody doesn't want to believe that Tucker Carlson was part and parcel of that lawsuit and that his text messages were part of the reason why Fox News lost that lawsuit. Don't believe me. I'll tell you that it's true that they were. Yesterday, somebody was saying it had nothing to do with Tucker Carlson. Okay, well, you might want to go and read some of the lawsuit and read some of the text messages that were cited in that lawsuit, because they absolutely were part of the reason why. And one of the things is that I've discussed with you, and I don't like talking about this, and I don't like saying this because I know it's not popular. Okay, but the truth is, sometimes the truth is just not popular. And the truth is that many of the Fox News hosts, and some of them who are out now, didn't believe that the 2020 election was stolen. They just told you that it was. And I took no end of crap, especially when I was on conservative talk radio, for saying I didn't think that it was. And I think that most of my fellow conservatives in talk radio are just, like I've said many times on this, they're scared shitless of you. Okay. Yes, you, the viewer, right? I get so many more views if I tell you just exactly what you want to hear. I will make so much more money. I will be so much more successful here in podcasting if I just build an audience based on knowing exactly what they want to hear and telling them exactly what they want to hear. And I'll tell you, after 2020 and the election night loss and the way that went down with the Arizona call, a lot of those Fox News hosts, and maybe even Tucker Carlson, were scared shitless of their audiences because they knew that they did not want to hear that the election was fairly decided, right? They wanted to hear that the election was stolen because that's what Donald Trump was telling them. And I'll tell you this, they didn't believe it, but they knew where their ratings would lie. They knew where their ratings would lie. But the problem is with lies is that eventually the chickens come home to roost. I may not have the biggest audience in right-wing talk, but I'll tell you this, I have one of the most loyal audiences in right-wing talk, and I'm not scared of my audience because I tell you the truth, what I actually believe. And I'll tell you, thousands, tens of thousands of people have come and gone in Austin Peterson land, AP for Liberty world, because they've heard something that they didn't like, that they didn't agree with, that didn't go along with the programming, and they've departed. Okay, I have to accept that, right? Bad for business, but good for my conscience and sleeping at night. I'm only going to live 80 years on this planet. Every single day is precious, and I'm not going to waste it sitting down trying to appease people, wondering if the day's going to come that they're going to find out that I don't actually believe what I'm saying, and that's going to be my doom, my end. Let's continue on with some of the key takeaways from the departure of Fox News. Before I do, though, real quick, let's go to our Twitter weirdness scene, because I thought it was fascinating. Everybody is saying, oh, this is the reason why Tucker Carlson is out. This is the reason why Tucker Carlson is out. I thought it was interesting that Glenn Greenwald said, don't forget that yesterday, AOC went on the show of Biden's ex-White House press secretary and demanded the government ban Tucker for being allowed on TV. Take a listen to this. He says, Dems like AOC are utter authoritarians who crave state censorship.
Federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And That is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with. Federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly.
Well, the only problem is with this is incitement to violence is when violence was actually going down in our cities just a couple of years ago, the Democrats, not only were they inciting it, they were applauding it. It's just their violence is bad violence. Our violence is good violence. Some more key takeaways from the Fox News exit of Tucker Carlson. Fox is also facing another $2.7 billion lawsuit from Smartmatic. And that names Maria Bartiromo and Janine Pirro as defendants in that case. The trial in that case is not expected for months, if not years. But the Dominion settlement has opened the door to a similar result in the Smartmatic case. A spokesperson for the network stated that we will be ready to defend this case surrounding extremely newsworthy events when it goes to trial. As a report prepared by our financial expert shows, Smartmatic's damages claims are implausible, disconnected from reality, and on its face intended to chill First Amendment freedoms. Yeah, no kidding. But the problem is that having paid this out, Fox News is opening the door to more lawsuits like this. And I can't say that it's necessarily a good thing, because I do think that it does have that this does create negative consequences that are unintended, and that could be bad for free speech and journalism in the future. But the problem, of course, is that Fox News, if they knew that if they didn't settle that case, it could have been a full $1 billion that they have to pay out. So these are definitely dark times and some difficult questions that we have to contend with. These are not black or white issues of which one side is necessarily all good or one side is necessarily all evil, unless you're talking about the Democrats and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and that in which case it's pretty black and white, that what she's advocating for is pure evil. Another one here, in regards to a key takeaway from Tucker Carlson's exit from Fox News, the GOP loses its biggest critic. Carlson has actually been a big thorn in the side of leadership and top figures within the GOP. He's been openly critical of those on the right that he calls America's ruling class, and he's battled them on a number of big issues, including immigration, the Ukraine war, COVID-19 vaccines, financial matters, and the January 6th attack on the Capitol. A prime example of his power came earlier this year as House GOP leadership forces were hopeful he would step in and give Kevin McCarthy a boost in his bid to get the votes that he needed to earn the gavel. Carlson actually started to pan McCarthy and lay out the demands that he would need to meet to win the votes. Then months later, McCarthy handed over 41,000 hours of January 6th footage to Carlson, paving the way for a series of segments that were panned by top Republicans, including Senator Mitch McConnell. He's been a constant target of Carlson's ire. All right, I'm going to go get our buddy Mark McCluskey to get his reaction to this. He says there's no reason to watch Fox News anymore. No reason. There's no reason to watch Fox News anymore. We'll hear from Mark McCluskey when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com, broadcasting from the heart of the country, the heart of Missouri, Jefferson City. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're glad to have you here. My next guest, a frequent guest on the Tucker Carlson show, says there's no reason to watch Fox News anymore. Joining me now, former U.S. Senate candidate from the state of Missouri, Mark McCluskey on the line right now. You might know him as the AR-15 gun guy. Hi, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So, no reason to watch Fox News anymore, Mark?
Well, Tucker Carlson was the last honest the only guy out there crying in the wilderness, talking, and just contrary to the standard background noise of the mainstream media. Interestingly, on Sunday of this week, AOC said that we can't allow people like Tucker Carlson to be on the air because we have to protect free speech by censoring people. And lo and behold, the next day, Tucker gets the axe. But actually, I guess it was probably, from what I'm hearing, Friday night after Tucker's show, Lachlan Murdoch and Suzanne Scott got together and decided they're going to can him. But it's a one of the most serious blows to free speech in America, because here's the guy who was the most popular and most powerful voice for freedom in America, who just gets canned overnight. He finishes his show on Friday night with, spend the weekend with those that you love, and I'll see you on Monday. Well, no Monday.
Mark, you're a lawyer. What are your thoughts on that lawsuit by Dominion?
I think let me do it this way. When we got defamed by the press, we hired lawyers whose names that people would recognize because they represented Carl Rittenhouse and the Covington Catholic kid, as well as the Olympic Park bomber, and they were making big hay on all these cases, but everything was getting reversed on appeal, because getting over that Sullivan versus New York Times hurdle of actual malice, when you get to the Court of Appeals, you almost always lose. And so they gave up on those cases eventually. And if Fox had just stuck to their gun, I mean, all they were doing was putting on people like Rudy Giuliani and Mike Lindell and people like me that tend to tell what they
Mark, looks like you're breaking up there a little bit this morning.
Without fear of consequences. But Fox,
if you're just yeah, it looks like you got a little bit of low network bandwidth over there. It's no problem. Well, I'm sure it'll iron itself out. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to Mark McCluskey, who is a lawyer from St. Louis, Missouri. He's joining us now to talk a little bit about the lawsuit against Dominion lawsuit against Fox News and the subsequent firing of Tucker Carlson. So you would lay the blame for Tucker's firing squarely at the foot of this lawsuit, not any other kind of conspiracy theories, because we're hearing, all kinds of scuttlebutt from all different directions. But you think this lawsuit is really the reason?
Well, I think it's two things. I think that Tucker he wasn't a team player. He was unpredictable. And there's nothing that people who, particularly with B's behind their name, meaning billionaire, there's nothing they hate more than unpredictability. They like to control everything. And you've got the Murdochs with billions of dollars, and you're faced with somebody who's becoming more powerful in the public eye than your billions of dollars. So what do? You got to cut the head off the snake, or the snake might bite you in the rear. And I think that's a big part of it.
Now, what about Dan Bongino? I guess he was out as well. I don't think he was named in the lawsuit as well. But I mean, Fox News is kind of shedding some of their biggest talent.
Yeah, and we've heard rumors about Maria Bartiromo and Judge Janine and that. But when we were at CPAC in D.C. earlier this spring, Patty and I were in the front row waiting for President Trump to give his address, and we were talking with the big wigs and the hobnobbers, and it was clear then that everybody was saying Fox is fired as a result of this, and so that's part of it. But I think it's just an excuse. Like I say, I think the real problem was that there is almost unanimous pushing for war with Russia, and almost unanimous support for unlimited support of Ukraine, no matter what it costs us. And he was the only voice in the wind saying this makes absolutely no sense for America. America has no vital interest in Ukraine, absolutely no interest in getting involved in World War III with Russia and China, particularly at a time when militarily depleted the narrative these days, because there's only supposed to be the uniparty. There's only supposed to be one frame of reference, and he was going counter narrative, and you just can't do that. Same with Dan Bongino. I mean, people that know will actually say what they mean and mean what they say. Think Donald Trump here, are pariah.
Now, what about that second lawsuit there? Because I was just talking about it a little bit earlier. Smartmatic voting machines also has a lawsuit. I think they're also asking for an insane amount of money, some $1 billion against Fox. Do you think that by settling that initial lawsuit with Dominion, that it sort of is just going to bring the wolves to the door, sort of like chumming the waters, if you will?
You shouldn't feed the bears because they keep coming back to the trash can.
Right. Right, but does that mean, Mark, that it's possible Fox News could go bankrupt for something like this?
Well, I think that they're going to lose a big chunk. But I was talking to a client of mine who works for Anheuser-Busch, and he was saying they're in a management meeting the other day after the Dylan Mulvaney disaster, and they're saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. A couple of news cycles, and everybody will forget." Well, I'm not sure that everybody will forget and forgive Bud Light, and I don't think everybody will forget and forgive Fox for firing Tucker Carlson. I think you're going to lose a big chunk of their listenership, and I think it's going to affect their bottom line. And they're not going to find, when they put Grind Kill Meat on for his 7th hour of the day last night, I don't think that people are going to find that to be a reasonable replacement for Tucker Carlson.
Mark, I come from the liberty wing of the Republican Party. I believe in absolute free speech. I think you even ought to be able to yell "fire" in a crowded theater to a certain extent, especially if there's a fire in the theater. But but I played a clip earlier of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she said that deplatforming works and it is important. And it makes me wonder if sometimes when we're on a war footing, we have to curtail certain beliefs and fight to deplatform those who want to deny us our free speech. I mean, how can we, without being hypocrites, how can we fight back against deplatforming and things like that the left wants to foist on us when they go after our advertisers, Mark, when they do everything they can to remove our ability to speak? I mean, how do we fight against that? How do we fight against people who are against free speech and still maintain our beliefs and values in free speech, Mark?
Well, one of the quotes from Thomas Jefferson that never gets repeated was, he said, "The greatest threat to a free democracy is a free press." And that balance between free speech and how it can come back to haunt you has been with us since the founding father. Joe Biden launched his reelection campaign today with a theme of freedom, right? When in fact he's the president that has done the most to restrict our freedom, to disinformation governance board and all of his unconstitutional lockdowns and restrictions. And so whatever they say, they mean the exact opposite. But, and Donald Trump touched on this at CPAC, but, they use our goodwill and civility against us. And we have to be willing to use their tactics in order to survive. And if that means vote harvesting, for example, in places where it's legal, if that means trying to be the loudest voice in the room to drown out the lies, then we have to do that. The problem is that the legacy media controls most of the people. And I always talk about it like this. So there's this kind of background hum of what people who don't pay attention, people that aren't like you and me, that don't live and breathe politics, kind of background hum that they get from mainstream media and from television and advertising. That is, Republicans bad, racist, fascist, Democrats good, kind, and love their fellow man, when the exact opposite is the truth. But you can't defeat that until you take control of more of the media. And right now the media is not taking more control. And people like Tucker Carlson and Dan Bongino, who are the gifts truth.
Mark, can you talk to us about the 2024 presidential election race just a little bit? I'd love to get your opinions on this because I see a lot of pros and cons in the Trump versus DeSantis matchup. But when I look at the Trump presidency, the Trump nomination, there seems to be more cons than there are on the Ron DeSantis side, where it seems to be mostly pros versus cons. Where do you kind of fall between those two candidates? Are you on the Trump train, or are you open to other candidates, or maybe even somebody else, maybe like RFK? Mark, you there, bud?
Yeah, I think we broke up there a little bit, but
Yeah.
I'm still 100% behind Donald Trump. I got to tell you, of all the presidential candidates I met when I was down at CPAC, the guy that impressed me the most, other than Donald Trump, was Vivek Ramaswamy. The sharp young man. He's very conservative. He's right on point. He's not afraid to say his mind, and he's like I say, he's very, very sharp. I think he'd make a great candidate. But Donald Trump, the thing that you got to remember with him, because they just take negotiation and bargaining as a weakness. What you have to do is have somebody with a personal force of will that you can overcome all that. And I analogize President Trump to that theme in all the zombie apocalypse movies, where this plague takes over and infects everybody, but one person is immune. And then you have to have this cadre of people that protect him and transport him to that place where his immunity can be extracted and then applied population to save everybody. And you got to have that person who's immune. And Donald Kennedy.
That's good stuff, Mark. And
Is that true?
Yeah. No, I got it. Unfortunately, it looks like we've got a little bit of a bad connection today, so I'm going to have to leave it there. But I do appreciate your point of view on this one, Mark, and I hope to have you back again really soon. Thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Mark. Take care. We'll talk to Mark McCluskey again very soon. He says there's no reason to watch Fox anymore. What did you think about Mark McCluskey? Don't forget, we've also got the lovely Camellia Peterson, who's going to be joining us here at 8 a.m. I'm looking forward to hearing from her about why the state of Missouri wants to ban gender reassignment surgery for adults. That's pretty wild. Tolly Owens was asking over the live stream, what did he say he spoke? Who did he say he spoke to at CPAC? Didn't catch it. Mark said that he spoke to Vivek Ramaswamy. That was actually the other person other than Donald Trump who he thought was the most interesting, who caught his attention the most. I haven't been able to talk yet a little bit about the firing of Don Lemon. I thought this little snippet was interesting in how this woman reported on the firing of Don Lemon versus Tucker Carlson. See if you can tell a difference between the two. Take a listen to this.
We want to begin tonight with a major shakeup in the media landscape as the most watched cable network, the conservative Fox News, has abruptly parted ways with its top-rated anchor, Tucker Carlson. The stunning news could ripple through American politics as Tucker Carlson is considered one of the most influential voices in the Republican Party. And it comes just 6 days after Fox agreed to pay nearly $800 million for making false claims about Dominion voting systems. Carlson is at the center of the false vote rigging claims following the 2020 election, as well as a new discrimination lawsuit filed by a former producer, alleging a hostile and discriminatory work environment. Shares of Fox Corporation dropped 3% on the news. And CNN has fired its longtime host, Don Lemon. After 17 years at the network, the embattled morning show co-host faced backlash after saying women in their 50s were past their prime.
Now notice this, and I thought that was interesting. I agree with Media Busters here, Media Research Center, when they posted this one, is that they describe Fox News and Tucker Carlson as conservatives, but they didn't describe Don Lemon and CNN as liberal. You see, they love to pretend like the media that comes from the left is straight, unbiased, nonpartisan reporting, but everybody knows that CNN is a liberal news network. For God's sakes! Oh, here come the hiccups. Oh God, here they come. Yeah, this was the interview that she was talking about this with Don Lemon and Vivek Ramaswamy, who Mark McCluskey just said he really enjoyed. Good time to play it for you now, because guess what? I got the hiccups. Take a listen.
I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was part of what secured them that freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on one second. So to say that black people, say what you said again?
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They were not secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not, you are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to happen.
And you know how they got it?
And here's the thing. And people are going to pretend like he's not a liberal. People are going to act like he's an unbiased, that this is straight reporting, right? That this isn't some activist network. I mean, come on. And Vivek's doing a damn good job here, by the way.
Rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not play a big role in that.
Absolutely, they trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role in that.
This is just historical fact. But
not historical fact.
The part that I find...
because you say it's historical fact.
So notice that the lady who's next to him, after Don Lemon had made all these comment about women and, not being in their prime, here he is, he's just completely blowing past. He's got this female anchor next to him, and she just, look at the way she does her hair there. She messes, watch how she touches her hair during this interview. That's how you can tell she's annoyed, because of the way she scratches the back of her head and touches her hair, because Don isn't letting her get a word in. Take a listen.
Change the freedoms that were supposed to
happen. And you know how they got it? They got their Second Amendment rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not play a big role in that.
Absolutely, they trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role in that.
This is just historical fact. But Don, the part that I find...
Just because you say it's historical fact.
The part that I find insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have gone through civil rights revolution in this country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have a different point of view.
Black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate.
I'm not saying you
without me regarding you as a black man,
insulting that
but
you're
me regarding you
here,
as a fellow citizen.
That you're
That's what I
sitting
think we should
here,
see.
whatever ethnicity you are.
Look at her. Look at Poppy. Look at her. See, if you're not paying attention, if you're just listening to what's being said, then you might miss the little show that's going on right next to Don Lemon. This Poppy Harlow. Watch how she's sitting there. She gets bored. She gets her phone and starts texting. Yeah. Watch this.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate without me regarding you as a black man, but me regarding you as a fellow citizen. That's what I think we should see.
Whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me.
Whatever ethnicity.
She doesn't want none of that smoke. But also she looked very uncomfortable, Dan Snow. Exactly, right? Hilarious. It's almost over.
What's it like to be black?
Whatever ethnicity I am, I'll tell you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate.
The content of the ideas.
If you're going to do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a fair way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay? We appreciate you coming on.
With due respect, Don, I look forward to continuing that conversation.
Thank you. The conversation.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Papa.
We'll talk about China.
Yeah.
Did you see that limp handshake that he gave him, by the way? Just back that up real quick. Watch Don Lemon's limp little handshake.
Respect, Don. I look forward to continuing that conversation. Thank you. Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Papa.
We'll talk about China.
Yes, let's talk about China.
Next time you come back.
Oh, thank you. Much to say on declaring independence from China.
Okay,
something you can
move
add
on now, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What did you guys think about it? Yeah, texting while on TV. That's how you know that stuff is just really that it's really gone off the rails. Okay, I gotta go. I gotta take a quick little break. I'm gonna go bathroom. I gotta go bathroom. Gotta go bathroom. All right, when I get back though, I've got more clips of Tucker Carlson talking at the Heritage Foundation this weekend. It's good stuff. A lot of people say, oh, this is why he was fired because of these comments and stuff. I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm more on the Mark McCluskey train of thinking it was definitely that Dominion lawsuit. We'll talk about that when we get back at the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, you know, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. And America, come on, man.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Smash that like button if you're appreciating the show today. We love seeing all of our friends over on Rumble. Nice big crowd today. More people than on YouTube. You love to see it. Of course, I will always have my heart with my Cantina crew over at YouTube as well, but it's nice to see a big audience over there on Rumble. We'll give you a big round of applause if you'll do us a favor. Click that like button over on Rumble and help us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. And of course, all of our friends over on YouTube should do the same. Very excited to have you here today to discuss a big story. Tucker Carlson out at Fox News. And I hesitate to even mention Don Lemon in the same breath, but yeah, he was fired from CNN as well. We're talking about some of the big takeaways about the Tucker Carlson. Well, I can't call it a firing because we don't know for sure that that's what it was. The left was blaring the news. Tucker Carlson fired from Fox. Tucker Carlson fired from Fox. But we don't know that that's exactly what happened for sure until we know for sure. So I'll refrain from reporting that one. Tucker Carlson, of course, facing questions about his future. What do you do after you've been at Fox News? There is no bigger media network. There was no bigger show. I mean, this is a huge story. What happened to Bill O'Reilly? He kind of became a digital media nomad, right? And he does headline speaking gigs, and he has a podcast like myself. Megyn Kelly, after she departed, she went to NBC for a little while, but then she split with that network. She's now in the podcast and radio sphere, but she's got a lot more attention, I would say, than perhaps Bill O'Reilly does these days. But Carlson has a lot more cachet on the right than Megyn Kelly or Bill O'Reilly. And so the question is, are there any other networks that really could match his star power? I think the answer is no. CNN and MSNBC, they've both gone further left in recent years. That's not a place for Tucker. Newsmax, people might say, One America News Network, they both have a fraction of Fox's viewership, so that doesn't seem to be likely. Could a digital media return be in the cards? Carlson has experience doing that with launching the Daily Caller. Does he perhaps go back to the Daily Caller and take it over again and turn it into an even bigger media outlet with podcasts and video in his own show? I really don't know. I mean, here's the thing. Ask yourself this. If you were in Tucker's position, what could you possibly do that would have a bigger, greater impact? I mean, think about what Glenn Beck did, right? And I saw Glenn Beck talking about it yesterday, and he was saying, "Hey, Tucker, come work it with us at the Blaze." And certainly, I think that would be exciting. It would be good for both the Blaze and for Tucker Carlson. But I don't know that it would necessarily have the same massive impact as his show on Fox. So once you've hit the zenith there, where do you go after that? To me, it would seem like retirement would really be the only logical next step, because it would be damn near impossible to top the number one rated show with the biggest audience on the biggest network in the country. I don't know where you go after that. And I think that's what people like Megyn Kelly and Bill O'Reilly and others have struggled with, is that once you sort of reach the zenith, after that, everything else is, I won't say small potatoes, but it doesn't have the same luster, right? Same with Glenn Beck. When he was on Fox News, that was the height of his fame. And although the Blaze still does well and has a good audience, it doesn't quite have the same audience, of course, as his cable news shows on Fox did. Am I right or am I wrong? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this one. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Yeah, some people said he should probably just run for president, but I don't think that that's necessarily in the cards for him. I would be curious to hear your thoughts, though. Again, the text lines are open, and I do like to share your text messages with our audience if you would like to have something that an opinion you'd like to have read on air. Again, 573-319-1586. Tucker Carlson gave a rousing speech at the Heritage Foundation over last weekend. My friend Joe Trotter was there and said that he could read the tea leaves from the way that Tucker was talking. Let's take a listen to this speech and react.
It might be time to start to reassess the terms we use to debates about the way to get to mutually free and people to be less oppressed. But the objective is the same. And so we write our papers and they write their papers, and may the best papers win. I don't think that's, and I've come to this conclusion, and I should say at the outset I'm an Episcopalian, so don't take any theological advice from me, because I don't have any. I grew up in the shallowest faith tradition that's ever. I'm just saying this as an observer of what's going on. There is no way to assess, say, the transgenderist movement with let's sexually mutilate children. An androgynous population? Is that really what we
honestly think that that's a fascinating question. That question. What is the left really advocating for these days? I mean, can you really put in a research paper, a white paper, the positions that the left today seems to be advocating for an androgynous population, castrating the next generation of children en masse? It doesn't make any sense, but maybe that's the point. Let's continue.
Positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate.
YouTube has a really good question. He said, badly. Well, Romans, I would say that under normal circumstances that you would be correct. But I think that we're not living under normal circumstances. At war, is you would say, well, is it okay for so you're saying it's okay for us to kill their soldiers, but it's not okay for them to kill ours? That seems a little bit hypocritical. It means that we're going to our soldiers, and we are going to engage in that. You can call it hypocrisy if you will, but the laws of war and the rules of war are not the same as the laws of peace and the rules of peace. And that's let's continue.
If you say, well, I think abortion is always bad. Well, I think sometimes it's necessary. That's a debate I'm familiar with. It's not about a teen. Well, that's like an Aztec principle, actually. There's not a society in history was everybody. So like that's what that is. What's the point of child sacrifice? Well, there's no policy goal entwined with that. No, that's a theological phenomenon, political terms. When the largest human organization in human history, hey, let's tear it down. Yes, and I'll put it in and I'll stop with this. I'll put it in I'll put it in non-political,
to a commercial
or
break very
rather
briefly. Don't take off. I see a lot of people taking off because
specific
we're having a little bit of
theological
internet
terms,
issues
and
this
just
morning.
say,
I told
if
you
you
they
wanna
weren't
know what's
completely and fully
evil and
solved. I
what's
said
good,
that
what
we
are the
had a little bit of challenges left to go with our internet speeds. Yesterday I had a wired connection. Today that office where the internet is, so unfortunately today I'm streaming on Wi-Fi. Please forgive me. Okay, hopefully the internet will be working better when I get back from the commercial break, where Camellia Peterson will join us to talk about androgenism in Missouri for adults when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America Show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? You can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new...
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. It's Tuesday, the 25th. Thank you very much for tuning in. All right, Tucker Carlson out at Fox News, Don Lemon out at CNN. I know you want to talk about that for now, but I've got another question that I want to ask, because here in the state of Missouri, in regards to Tucker Carlson's androgynous comments, here in the state of Missouri, there's some legislation that's being proposed that would ban children from being able to reassign their gender. Okay, good. We all agree with that, right? But what about adults? Shouldn't adults be able to do what they please with their bodies, provided they harm no one else? I would think that that would be a pretty much universally accepted principle, but apparently not everybody believes that. Joining me now to discuss is a good friend of the show, Camellia Peterson, who's joining us today. Good morning, CJ. How are you doing?
Good morning. Doing well. Thank you.
Glad to have you here. So what's the word about this legislation? Is this all just kind of a mix-up or an accident through wording, or is somebody actually trying to ban gender reassignment for adults?
Well, a couple of different things. We've been talking about the legislation that's been going through this. It's not all the way through yet, but it's almost there. That would ban gender transition surgeries and hormone blockers, medications for minors. Fully on board with that. Fully support that, and we definitely better get that done this time. But on top of that, after they had already started the process of working through that legislation in the legislature, Missouri's Attorney General Andrew Bailey had come out with an emergency order that basically, when it goes into effect, will place certain restrictions on being able to access gender affirming care. I hate that term so much, by the way.
I do too. Yeah, same.
Like, it's not care, and it's anyway. But so some of the restrictions that he included on that were things that make a whole lot of sense, and we were all at the time looking at this. This would be a way to put those things into effect immediately, as opposed to the law, which would take a little bit to go into effect. But when it was things that make sense, like you had to go through like 15 separate hourly counseling sessions, you had to, be screened for autism, you had to be screened for other mental health comorbidities, a lot of things that made sense. But I think what at the time, what we thought this was great and really weren't focusing on was that it wasn't just limited to minors. This was applied to anybody when it came to transition surgeries. It applied to everybody. So that has been coming more to the forefront in this past week. And so the ACLU has filed a suit to block the emergency order. And there are a number of plaintiffs that are represented in that suit, and it's minors as well as adults. But, you're seeing articles come out now every day about transgender, adults and couples and thruples, and talking about how they are looking at that they're going to need to move, and they're raising money to help them move to other states so they can continue getting their care. And, while you and I may be fully on board with this for minors, it's a totally different story when it comes to adults. Do I think that maybe from a purely medical, health point of view, that maybe there should be some requirements for physicians, if they are going to give people bad advice and prescribe them medications that will have permanent effects, that maybe they should, provide proper care in actually treating the mental illness that's behind these things very often. Maybe they should do that. But this particular instance where you're cutting everything off carte blanche, and for adults, I think is not good policy. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, the current Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, had done an interview and was asked about this order and the legislation that's going through. And he said, it's, for minors, it's one thing. We need to take care of that. But if you're talking about adults, that's an entirely different matter. And he may not agree with it, but it is an adult's right to make that decision and live with those consequences.
I think, on a base level, I agree with you, Camellia, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here for just a moment on that question, because if you think about it, what if that, even that, what you call gender affirming care for adults, what if it's quackery, right? Even for adults, what if it's actually doctors and activists who are committing crimes against the mentally ill? I mean, think about the people who have detransitioned. Some of them transitioned when they were adults, and now they speak out and they talk about what was done to them by doctors and by agitators, and they regret it. I mean, I'm not saying that we should ban gender reassignment surgery for adults, but I mean, maybe there has to be more scrutiny, even maybe an even higher bar still to perform that kind of surgery on someone, because they're not all like Sarah Higdon. And I mean, honestly,
Right.
I felt like when I interviewed Sarah Higdon a few months ago about that, and I asked her if she ever thought that she might have regrets in the future, she said she doesn't see it that way, but there was a kind of a flash, a brief flash in her face of a bit of worry that one
Right.
day regret might set in.
I think she acknowledges that possibility.
Mhm.
And and that is really hard. This is why I think that our response to an issue like this is really important, because I do think that people are being taken advantage of in the name of political correctness and progressive ideology here. Because a lot of these people, adults even, that are getting diagnosed with gender dysphoria and are being, cleared for these procedures, also are on the autism spectrum. You had sent me a clip here a while back where there were also people with Down syndrome who are now, falling prey to this. And I do say falling prey to this because I think they're being taken advantage of, like you said. And so I do think that there should be, just from a medical health, do no harm point of view, that there should be some guidelines and restrictions in place, just to prevent, the quackery. I do think that we need to be careful how we approach this. This is kind of like, to me, this is a little bit like the abortion issue, in that there's a real tendency on the right to go full bore and completely condemn everybody and not recognize and not verbalize the very real fact that people are struggling in the middle of this, and they think this is the answer. They may be very wrong about it, but and all these people that are, all these doctors and health, professionals that are prescribing these things and recommending them, may think that they are doing good, but it really becomes a form of activism, and they're deluded. And once you start making a mistake, it's kind of like when people were doing lobotomies. They're not going to admit they've been responsible for, the deaths and just like scrambling the brains of thousands and thousands of people, to their detriment. So um people kind of get that sunk cost fallacy, I guess. People get so far in and they don't want to accept the repercussions themselves of what that would mean, what they would have to live with. But I do think we need to be sensitive to the struggle that people are going to, which is why, um, one of the things, I don't know if you are aware of this, but in the bills that have been going through the legislature in the House, there were a couple of people who voted against a House version of that bill limiting transition procedures. And one of them is a mutual friend of ours. And I was like, I know that he is opposed to this with minors. So I was like, I was like, why? What was the reason? I knew there had to be a reason behind that vote. And what he said was that there, when you cut it off immediately for even minors who are already going through this right now, it's kind of a disregard for the repercussions medically of what might happen to them, in that they've already, their bodies have already been subjected to this, and you can't just go cold turkey on this. There's got to be some, there's got to
A
be a
weaning
different
period.
way. Right.
Mhm.
So we tend to be black and white in some of this stuff, and we need to recognize that there are, there are complications as part of this.
Man, that's an interesting conversation to be had, and certainly I don't think that's one that a lot of people are having. Good morning. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson. I'm your host. Make sure you smash that like button to help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty, which is what we're all about here. I'm joined by my good friend Camellia Peterson. We're talking a little bit this morning about an emergency order that would prevent even adults from transitioning gender here in the state of Missouri. I was listening to that Tucker Carlson speech from the Heritage Foundation last weekend, and I was actually really struck by what he said when he talked about what is the asking the question of what is it the left is really advocating for, an androgynous society, which is,
Right.
which is, to me, is just bonkers. It's nuts. It's anti-science. It's anti-biology. I mean, it people, it's a desire to, it's a revolt against nature, if you will. And I mean, frankly, you know, as someone who's extremely, I consider myself extremely tolerant and open-minded, this is the kind of thing that absolutely disgusts me, because it seems to me as if not only are the left's anti-natalist, but I mean, they're anti-human to an extent.
Right. And this, we've talked about this before in sort of related issues, that we've come full circle back to the oppression of women now. So, I
Fascinating.
mean, like feminism has done a complete turnaround on itself.
Yeah, it is
It's
amazing
wild.
though. It is amazing though that and feminism really is the right place to put the blame for a lot of this, Camellia, because a lot, that's what this gender study and gender theories and critical theory has largely sprung out of, is the feminist movement, which is largely Marxist. But you know, in terms of like fighting the cultural wars, you know, some people are disagreeing with my analysis of what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said earlier today when I played this clip about her talking about why deplatforming is good and we need to continue to use it. I happen to think that in this scenario that because there isn't necessarily a hard libertarian principle, and I would classify some things as hard libertarian principles and soft libertarian principles, like very briefly, for example, freedom of speech. The hard principle is that the government can't censor. The soft principle is that corporations should not censor, and that deplatforming has a chilling effect on free speech. That in that soft libertarian area, that sometimes we can be a little bit more squishy, meaning that fighting back against deplatforming with deplatforming, I think, is a perfectly legitimate strategy. What do you think?
Now, when you say fighting back against deplatforming by deplatforming, like what does that mean to you? Like,
So let's say, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez loses her seat in Congress and gets a job at MSNBC. I think it would be a perfectly legitimate tactic for us to band together and to issue boycotts of her advertisers and to
Sure.
try and do everything that we can to remove her from that network and not grant her the ability to have that job or that platform.
right. Well, we're back to the cancel culture
Yeah,
conversation, right? And so
right.
there was this big pushback against, oh, you know, cancel culture is bad or whatever. But actually, you know, like there are, so yes, there are instances where true cancel culture is a
Boycotts.
bad thing. Right. Well, I mean, like, you know, cancel culture is, well, I know there's a little bit different than that. But yes, when we're talking about cancel culture in terms of boycotts and things like that, and, you know, public backlash, that's the free market at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it should work. I mean, when people vote with their voices and with their dollars and with their feet, and
Bud Light.
that's why, right, exactly. That's why the free market is such an important concept, and why it's been, you know, a little disturbing to see some of the organizations like the Heritage Foundation kind of starting to pull away or question some of those things, because we see this right now. I mean, you know, this is, I think what we'll find with Tucker, I mean, we already know what's going to happen with Tucker Carlson and Fox. People are mad, you know, they're
Yeah.
not mad at Tucker, they're mad at Fox.
Yeah.
And so like the meme you posted, this is like Fox's Hold My Beer, you know, to Bud Light. But it's just, the thing is, I think Tucker Carlson can go anywhere and get platformed anywhere else. In fact, I really have a great idea for Donald Trump, by the way. I think that Trump should go ahead and pull out of the presidential race. And I think now is the time for him to start his television network. And he could have, you know, Tucker Carlson and Dan Bongino and, you know, all, like, seriously, strike while the iron's hot. This is the time, right?
That's very self-serving of you, Camellia, to say.
Two birds, one stone. That's fine.
Audience over there, almost 70 people watching us live today. Let's give them a big applause. What's going on, Rumble? How you doing today? Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, if you're watching us on Rumble and you're signed in, make sure you click that like button over there. Drop a comment. Introduce yourself. Don't like hold back in the wings. Some of you got to be saying, hey, I'd like to get to know you. So introduce yourself over in the comments, and we'd love to make your acquaintance and make friends. If you're watching us over on YouTube as well, I think I scared off a lot of people on YouTube because of the internet issues we were having earlier. Sorry about that, guys. My bad. But click that like button anyway if you're just joining us and you haven't watched the show before and you'd like to get more updates and alerts. Camellia, talk to me about the Tucker Carlson exit from Fox News. Do you have a strong opinion one way or another?
I don't really agree with, what you've been talking about, what several people have been saying as far as it having to do with the whole Dominion lawsuit and things like that, and the fact that, there were several of them that worked at Fox that came out and clearly did not support, this election denial business, even though they wouldn't really say that publicly, but they were saying it in their texts and yesterday that this is, who's the man that owns Fox? I just totally blanked.
Rupert Murdoch.
Thank you. Yes, that this is kind of par for the course. It's kind of the pattern that he does, and that he sees, like, he knows something's an issue, for a long time and doesn't do anything about it and doesn't do anything about it, and then it's like boom, like all of a sudden he's done.
Yes.
And so, so that was not a complete surprise to some people, but I think that it also goes to show us that even the people that we think are on our side and who are intellectually honest, as you kind of indicated earlier, at the end of the day, you also have to get those views. So you're not going to say exactly what you think, and you might even indicate otherwise. And, we can talk about the virtues or not of the noble lie, but anyway, there's a lot of that goes on in conservative media, popular anymore, on the right, but they're going to run to those sites and say that that's the trusted source. But I guarantee you those people are definitely doing the same thing.
Very true. Very true. Camellia Peterson, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go today?
All that we hear, we get immersed in it, frames our thinking. And I had said in the chat that one of the best things I think that I ever did was to stop listening to talk radio. And I think I probably did that around, 2015, 16. And I really do think that that's what allowed me to open my mind for other ideas. I think that I always had that libertarian foundation. The older I get, the more I look back at my childhood and how my parents raised me, and I see that, even if they didn't call it that. But I really do think that that's what opened me up for looking at things differently. And, then I had, heard some things when you were doing the John Stossel debate, and then it was all downhill from there. and I'm better for it.
Yes, I love to take credit for people's ideological revolutions that end up leaving them nothing but isolated and unhappy. Camellia Peterson, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you. Have a great one.
Have a great Tuesday, y'all.
Have a great Tuesday. What did you think of Camellia Peterson? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. Guess what? Who's next? BX Bullet, at BX Bullet TV. She says that Tucker Carlson was a psyop all along. But the entire time Tucker Carlson was a psyop? Where do you get this stuff? And then she wants to go on a rant about the transhumanist agenda. I don't know. It's wild, it's wacky, it's the Wake Up America show. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Don't you dare change that podcast dial. Do they even have dials? No, they're computers anymore. Don't you click that mouse button. We'll be back with more on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Donald Trump and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Step right up, ladies and gents, to learn about the coolest president yet. He's not just any old prez, he's Calvin Coolidge, and boy oh boy is he different from the rest. He was quiet as a mouse, but don't you underestimate his power. He knew how to handle money, and he didn't waste an hour. He cut taxes, lowered debt, and balanced the budget with ease. No wonder the Roaring Twenties brought such prosperity and peace. But don't take my word for it. Grab a copy of Calvin the Coolest President and see for yourself. It's a children's book that'll make you smile and help your little ones learn about wealth. You can find it on Amazon Kindle or get your hands on a paperback at apforlibertyshop.com. So come on down and get yourself a copy of the book that's making waves all around town. You won't regret it, so get ready to be floored because Calvin Coolidge, well, folks, he really scored.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
The real-world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Have you been enjoying the show so far? Good, good. I'm glad everybody's in a good mood on a Tuesday. It is the 25th, and we are live here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you click that like button or help us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty by dropping a super chat over on YouTube like our buddy Robbie George just did. Thank you for that, Robbie. Always appreciate people throwing into the tip jar to help us to spread the message of freedom across the land. All right, well, the lovely BX Bullet hasn't been on the show in quite some time, so I said it's time to bring her back. She says that the Tucker Carlson show was always a psyop. What? You don't hear POVs like that anywhere else, only on the Wake Up America show. Joining us now is the lovely BX. Nice to see you, BX. How are you today?
Hey, Austin. Good. I'm great. Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I use the word psyop necessarily. It's hard to use that word because like I feel like everything falls under that bucket now. It's just like, what does it even mean anymore? Right.
Sure.
But you know, I definitely made some people mad with my take yesterday, I guess I made, which is normal. That's fine. And the reason is because I'm not a media personality, so I don't get paid to lie to you or pander to you or tell you things that you want to hear. You know, in fact, lately I haven't even been doing my normal shows. I've just been painting on stream, doing art. And people will come in and ask me like for my take on something, and I'll just like go on some 10-minute rant about, you know, so it's kind of an interesting art stream, not quite as relaxing as some of the other ones. But, you know, as far as Tucker goes, you know, all of these mainstream media personalities, in my opinion, they're just telling you what you want to hear. You know, they're not going to tell you the truth if it's something that they don't think is going to resonate with their audience. And that's just general psychology, right? People don't like to be told that they're wrong. People don't like to have to think about something new. They want to just confirm what they've already believed, and that makes people feel happy inside. And that's unfortunate, right? Because then I come in and I say, hey, what's up with this? And people get really angry and they attack me, right?
Okay,
So
well,
I
we
think,
need some specifics though, BX.
yeah.
I want to know because what did you say yesterday about Tucker that made everybody angry?
So you might know this, but I got really involved with investigating mass shootings, right? And doing an independent, thorough investigations into these things that included, I mean, talking to families. I mean, I got way too involved, honestly. Should not do that again. But with the Highland Park shooting on the 4th of July last year, Robert Crimo shot, you know, a lot of people in Highland Park during a 4th of July parade from the roof. And this is something that I know everything about, more than I could even say online, because there's an upcoming trial and I have to be kind of careful about what I even talk about with it now. I did put out an entire docu-series with like the first part of that. It's on my Odyssey channel, and it's very interesting to see the psychology behind it and what the news got wrong. And you know, some of these things that the, you know, different various medias parrot every single time, like for example, the left parrots the gun control narrative, the right parrots, oh, it's SSRIs, or it's, you know, now it's gender identity. And this isn't new to the recent Nashville shooter either. There was talk about Robert Crimo being a transgender person, even though we have no evidence of that.
We just
right?
saw
But
pictures of him in
anytime-
a dress.
Yeah, yes. And it, you know, to us, we're thinking, okay, he's memeing there. It's just like, it's hard to explain, but there's a meme culture involved with some of these things. And there's an aesthetic, and there's forums, and there's communities where these people are radicalizing and they have inside jokes. It's very, very complex. You can't just see somebody, you know, in a disguise, you know, which makes a lot of sense. He was trying to get out of there and it worked. But as far as, you know, what I heard Tucker say specifically, it caused me to kind of jump down a pipeline. Like, you know, I call it Mario, right? I see like a little pipeline and I jump down it. And it ended me in, you know, incel forums, because what he started to say was that every mass shooter has something in common. And it's all that, you know, they have these women in their lives. They know their lives aren't going to be better, then their parents are going to be worse. Everything's terrible. He was basically just blaming women, which was very
You're talking
strange.
about Tucker
It was like,
Carlson?
yes. Yeah. So he specifically took this narrative. You know, he also mentioned SSRIs, which is Robert Crimo wasn't even on SSRIs at all, ever in his entire life. So people who say that, they're usually trying to sell you something at the end of their little spiel about SSRIs. But regardless, yeah, Tucker took this stance that it was women's fault. And what he was saying was really familiar, because it sounded a lot like what I had recently heard Nick Fuentes say on a clip, the same kind of rhetoric, right? That same kind of like, it's almost like he was trying to justify this, like, if you were a shooter out there who did fall into that category that he was talking to, it's almost like he's riling you up and saying, yeah, I should, he's right. That's why I'm angry. And it's almost like justifying that kind of mentality, which is really dangerous, because that's what you see shared in these incel forums, which, if you don't know what those are, great. They're the worst places in the world. Your soul will leave your body if you're there for too long. And there are actual terrorists in these places, and they are assessing the different members for specific vulnerabilities, and they're grooming them. They're grooming them to radicalize them, indoctrinate them, and you know, get them to kill a bunch of people. This is actually happening. I've seen it with my eyes. You know, I like to rely on things that I've seen personally, and less on things that are floating around out there. You know, I'm jumping into these extremist forums and reporting back to you. And so you don't have to go there, because it's really bad. So when I see these narratives being driven like that, it really makes me wonder, why is there this, you know, in the right-wing media in general, doesn't matter if you're Nick Fuentes or Tucker, I know that they're not the same. I know that their politics are not the same. So it's not that I'm comparing the two of them together or saying that they're the same, you know, ideology. What I'm doing is I'm saying that I've seen both of them pushing men towards this radical ideology of women are the reason that you have problems today. And I think the incels are very unique in that they're mostly white men who came from middle to upper middle class families. They're not economically disenfranchised. They're not, people who've had really tough upbringings. And they're being told that the reason that they're failures is because of somebody else, which to me is just a way to get people, like to pick at people's mental illness and try to shape them into something
Nobody wants
else.
to blame themselves for their problems. Everybody, there's since the beginning of time, there's always been people who said, no, it's the others. So your problems aren't
Right.
are you part of your personal failings, or part of some external force, which is not to
Yes.
discount the fact that, postmodern feminists, Marxists, cultural Marxists don't have some play in society, and that a lot of the problems that are engendered in society don't come from the gender debate that we're currently engaged in, though, right, BX?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm not discrediting the fact that there are these issues in society, but these people take it to the extreme of saying that actually all of my problems in life are because of this group of people. It's not that, oh, there's a complex cultural phenomenon that we need to address, right? It's not that. And, it's the same as a cult. It's the same as any cult. It's always an us versus them, right? Any extremist group, any the neo-Nazis, you could apply this to anybody. It's always bad actors. And usually they're not even hate-based. They're usually based on some kind of narrative or agenda that has to do with, money, power, and that kind of thing. And they're pushing these people to blame a specific group of people because it's easy to do. It's easy to get that echo chamber mentality going. And that's what I really think that Tucker is, and what I think that most mainstream media personalities are. They're echo chambers, right? And so while I'm not saying that he's a terrorist, all I'm saying is that he's feeding these agendas that I've been seeing funnel down into these more extreme, ideas and belief systems.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Thanks so much for watching us today. Make sure you click that like button on the stream to help us spread the message. I'm joined now by commentator and private investigator, BX Bullet. She's joining us today. We're talking a little bit about the exit of Tucker Carlson from Fox News and her thoughts on Tucker. Although I'd like to do a segue, talking about radical ideologies, BX, because one of the things that you mentioned to me in our DMs yesterday when we were talking about booking you was this concept of transhumanism. I'll set this up for you, and then I'll wind you up, and then I'll let you go. I've talked about this topic a few times on my show before. Where I've actually been rather cautiously optimistic about it, although I do see some potential dangers. But the idea of, being able to give blind people who have never seen before vision, or the idea that we can create robotic arms for people and that need prosthetics, and be able to sort of supplement the flaws in biology, especially for people who are disabled or unable to perform certain basic human functions, seems to me to be a great advancement. Transhumanism, if I could describe it very briefly, as I understand it, is just a sort of the supplementation of biology with technology. So you seem to have a big concern about this. What are your concerns?
Wow, you've really opened
Can of
Pandora's
worms here
box.
for you.
Yeah.
Have a bite.
Well, first of all, you're right. And I'm not in any way trying to stall technological progress or scientific progress. I am actually a scientist, like in my day-to-day life, right? So this is my world. However, any technology like that is going to come with some kind of grave consequence. When we're referring to not just like medical technology, but transhumanism, what that means to me at its most extreme is people merging with machines in a different way than just like, you had some kind of robotic arm installed, right? We're talking about like cyberpunk type of situation where what Elon is pushing for, and what I do think is actually very, very likely to be our future, is everything coming from here, a signal in your brain, connecting you to the cloud, connecting you to your phone. You wouldn't need your phone anymore. Basically, it's merging men with technology to the extent that they're indistinguishable. So that's the difference between general, robotics being used for, helping disabled people versus people using it to become superhuman. And I know this sounds, people will kind of laugh and think that this is like a science fiction, but I think you're going to find that it's not science fiction. It's definitely in our future. And it's something that I don't think people are ready to talk about because it's very difficult for us to, for a lot of people to accept that this is our future.
Well, my
But the
wife and I
problem with it
actually,
is,
hold on, BX. My wife and I were actually having this discussion the other day. We're not afraid of scary discussions. We like to talk about things like this. And we were asking this question in regards to designer babies. You know, if you had the opportunity to have a child without flaws, you know, why wouldn't you choose that? I mean, who in their right mind would say, if you had a choice, you know, would you like to have a child with autism, or would you like to have a child who had Down syndrome? Would you like to have a child who had, you know, let's say, you know, autoimmune disease runs in our family, right? If we could choose to sort of weed out that genetic abnormality, what parent wouldn't take that?
now, if you're just talking about weeding out genetic abnormalities, that's something that we can discuss. Although I would say that you're pushing it with the autism thing, because I think that this spectrum that we call autism, I don't think that it encompasses one specific defect, and it doesn't. In fact, we don't have like a specific genetic disorder that causes autism, like we
Okay,
have
so
like Down
put that
syndrome or
aside,
something
and
like
let's say
that.
I misspoke, and let's talk about something like an autoimmune disease, for example. You
Yes,
know,
absolutely.
if transhumanism solves some of those problems as well, I mean, who in their right mind would turn that down?
Well, what you're talking about is CRISPR. It already exists. And I think a lot of people don't understand the power of CRISPR. I mean, if you've seen the movie Gattaca, right, you've kind of already thought through the consequences of such a society where people are discriminated against specifically because of their genetic makeup. There's any kind of, you know, oppression and things that could happen after this. But the problem is that once you open that Pandora's box, it's open. And so we're not just talking about, oh, we're only going to use it to get rid of this autoimmune disorder. China has already made triplets who were genetically engineered using CRISPR. Now, whenever CRISPR came out, all the world leaders got together and said, okay, whoa, this is a huge Pandora's box, and we need to be very careful not to do this to people. We're not going to do it to people, right, guys? You know? And of course, if they're saying that to you, they're doing it because America has to do it, because they know that China's doing it. They know that all these other places are doing it. Therefore, they've got to pursue this technological advancement. And in fact, China did do it. A China scientist created triplets, and everybody was like, what the fuck, man? Like, we literally just asked you not to do that. And China's like, what are you going to do? Kill these little girls? You know, like, so it's already happened. They already have genetically engineered people. And the problem is that you get to this point where people are going to become superhuman. I'm telling you, like, have you seen the movie Limitless, where he like takes that pill that's like basically Adderall or something? I don't know.
Right.
And like all of a sudden he can like read the stock market, and he has unlimited bandwidth and access to information. So his brain doesn't have to work nearly as hard. And so what we're talking about is people who are going to end up having an evolutionary advantage to the standard human race, which is why transhumanism is really an evolutionary leap that's going to cause humanity as we know it to go extinct. So if you're one of the people who are in the cabin in the woods holding out, good for you, but your progeny is not going to be able to do that.
But
Eventually,
we're
all
it
going to
was,
have to
but
emerge.
wasn't it a good thing that Neanderthals went extinct? I mean, if this, we're certainly not perfected in our biology such as it is. I mean, whatever our, you know, the post-humans might be, if they have, you know, if they have superior biology to ourselves, I mean, that's an advancement. That's evolution.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a
I
why
agree
is
with
that
you.
something to be afraid of?
Well, here's the thing. When what you're talking about, the Neanderthals, right? Like, for people who don't know, when the Cro-Magnons appeared in Europe, right? Basically, they had really ideal environmental conditions, and they really, like, you know, developed quickly. And what we see is that within about 200 years, Neanderthals were extinct. This is a very small time period, right? What we're talking about is nowadays, as soon as people start to have this technology, boom, it's going to happen so fast that what it's going to end up being isn't just a phasing out, it's going to be a genocide. And the reason that's going to happen is because who's going to have the first access to this technology and who's not going to have access to the technology, right? So this is what Elon Musk has been talking about while he's pushing Neuralink. He's also been saying we need to find a way to equitably distribute this technology to the entire world without regard for profit. Now he
Pause.
knows that's not possible.
But here's the thing. So there's a bit of I'm pushing back a little bit because I've considered these things myself. There's a National Geographic documentary called Escape from Planet Earth, where there's two concepts for how humanity could escape if there was something that would destroy our planet, and how would we repopulate the galaxy. And the side that you seem to have taken is the more humanitarian government side of things from this documentary, where they go out and they just take random genetics from everybody on the planet, and then they put them together, and then they decide these are the people who are going to be able to escape. Versus the Elon Musk's, there's like an Elon Musk in this movie or show, and Elon Musk is the private space explorer who he sells the ticket to the highest bidder on his spaceship to be able to escape from Earth. And of course, since it's a government funded film, Elon Musk dies on the platform and it explodes. Whereas the benevolent government, egalitarian view of how to escape from Earth, where everybody had a chance and their genetics were tested, and we decided to bring these people to another planet. I mean, in a sense, BX, what you're saying here is that like there needs to be some kind of equality of genetics for who should be able to evolve. But that's number one, that's not how nature works.
Yeah.
And number two, why would you take inferior genetics if you had a choice? I mean, if you had to go to another planet, you certainly wouldn't take genetics from people who had diabetes.
Right. Well, I think that leaving the planet, that's a completely different subject, right? Because you're talking about like Elysium, right? The movie, like there's a movie with, I know you're talking about a documentary, there's a movie with Matt Damon where like all the elites live on this Jeff Bezos space station, right? And have all this medical technology, whereas everybody else stays on Earth and suffers. And so, yeah, that's a dystopian concept for sure. But I think that when I'm talking about transhumanism, what I'm really talking about is—
You said genocide. I mean, you think that like the people, that the superhumans are going to commit mass genocide against those of us with inferior genetics?
Yeah, I do. I mean, yeah, I do think that is possible. And I think that that's kind of what Elon Musk has been warning about when it comes to Neuralink, which is that access to this technology means that people could become very powerful, and a specific group of people who wanted to abuse that could become very powerful. And so what we need to start talking about now are ways to slow that down at the very least, so that we don't end up having, neo-Nazis developing, Aryan babies and doing kind of crazy, weird, evil things. There needs to be some kind of ability for us to slow that down and slow this whole transhumanist push down. But I really think that there's an agenda there that we don't even see. The agenda really is to get us comfortable with AI and comfortable with this idea that machines can take the place of people, right? They're trying to get you used to talking to machines. They're trying to get machines to be so good that you sense humanity in them, so that you don't get so weirded out by Siri, for example, right? I don't know, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I think that it's a really fun thing to talk about. And I do think that it's interesting to consider the dystopian consequences of that. And while what you're saying kind of aligns with what Elon Musk has said to Joe Rogan, which is basically like, it's futile to try to tell people to slow down. It's going to happen. Strap in for the ride, because, this rocket's taken off and there's really nothing that you can do about it. So we'll see, I guess. But I definitely think that you're on the right path. I've heard a lot more people claim the opposite and say, well, I'm not going to do it. And it's like, okay, well, that's bold of you. That's brave, good, noble. All right, go live in a cabin in the woods. But you're going to have to embrace it.
I want the brain chip as soon as it comes out. I'll even take the risk on the very first model, even though I wouldn't do that with my phone because I've learned my lesson there. But I just
want the robotic arms.
Yeah, I want the robotic arms. I want the robotic eyes. I want to become cyborg to plug me into the internet so I can live forever. BX Bulletin TV. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, or a plug or anything before we let you go?
Oh yeah, I'm going to totally plug my Etsy, because I have a new Etsy shop, and I've been selling my art that I make on stream, and it's pretty good. So Mother's Day is coming up. If you wanted to, I'll send you a link, Austin, maybe you can drop it. But if you wanted maybe a painting for your mother or something nice for her wall, go check that out.
It's a great idea. We'll do that. BX Bullet at BX Bullet TV. Thanks so much for your time today, BX. And it's good to see you again after a long hiatus. We'll
Yeah.
look forward to having you back again next week.
Yeah. Good talk. Thanks, Austin. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much. What do you think of BX Bullet? Send us a text 573-319-1586. All right. So since everything is a psyop, it's all a psyop. I thought I might advertise myself a little bit. Wait a minute. What the heck? Oh, that's the wrong part of the screen. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit. Psyop shirts, which you can find at ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. We've got a bunch of awesome items over at ap4libertyshop.com. Summer's coming. For those of you who are not quite as modest, perhaps, a bikini or an Aloha to Arms neon machine guns one-piece swimsuit. Where can you get these awesome toys? Where does he get these wonderful toys? Well, he gets them at ap4libertyshop.com. My Thomas Jefferson phone case, Altar of God phone case, available. For I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Thomas Jefferson, synthwave, holding a lightsaber. Where else can you get awesome stuff like that? Well, only here at ap4libertyshop.com. I've also got that on a t-shirt as well. Arrest Anthony Fauci. Some cool shirts like that. George Carlin was right. Exclusive products and merchandise at ap4libertyshop.com. You can get a Don't Tread on Me phone case, or you can get it as a shirt. Some of these things are on sale today. The F Around and Find Out outdoor mat. Haven't sold any of those just yet, but we just made those. Still time. Somebody can want to check those out at ap4libertyshop.com. We've got all kinds of fun stuff for people who love limited government, economic freedom, personal liberty. I got a pair of Ron Paul sneakers for you as well. My neon machine gun collection, American flag backpacks. She wants the D, DeSantis 2024 t-shirts. Tax this George Washington founding father tees. George Washington founding wrestler tees available at ap4libertyshop.com. It's all a psyop after all. Oh, I didn't get to play this other clip for you. You know what? I tell you what. Cut the music. Take a listen to this. Hold on.
Kids.
Put it on the audio.
I don't give a shit. They're not my kids. I don't give a shit. Why would I give a shit about somebody else's kids?
Talking about kids being
That's not my
parade.
job. Thank you very much. As a school teacher, I approve this message.
Pause 1 second here. So she's at a pride parade. She's asked about what does she think about kids being at the pride parade.
What do you
She
guys think
says,
about kids being at this event? Kids? They're not my kids. I don't give a shit. They're not my kids. I don't give a shit. Why would I give a shit about somebody else's kids? That's not my job. Thank you very much. As a school teacher, I approve this message.
Pause. Why would I give a you-know-what about somebody else's kids? As a school teacher, I approve this message. A school teacher who doesn't give a about somebody else's kids. Huh. All right. That's why I say abolish public schools. Taxes to pay for public schools? No, tax this dick. We say check it out at ap4libertyshop.com. Get yourself some awesome AP merch, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for tuning in. All you Rumblers, make sure you click like before you leave the stream. We have like 70, 80 people watching us over there at rumble.com today, and I'm super excited about it. Glad to see that we're popping off over there to MCP157, The Real WO, Digital Seuss, Nelson65, Scott Somarato, RVolt24, Studio Pi, that's 314, Rare Camellia, John Turner, Tolly Owens, my lovely wife Stephanie Peterson, Dances with Squirtles, did I say John Turner? I think I did. Robbie Theraman, nice to see you all here today. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're glad to have you. Thanks for being a friend of the show. Thanks for your support. Head over to ap4libertyshop.com, and I'm going to go watch the analytics to see how many people actually went to ap4libertyshop.com. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.